We do.
Well, I have in the past, and after I healed up, I quit. So that was kind of, but
Yeah.
never that much.
My sister keeps telling me I need to look at the date on my driver's license once in a while.
Right.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm going kicking and scratching.
There you go, Burl. You have the con.
All right, thank you, sir. I will see if I can get something up.
I'm already liking the new mouse, Burl.
I don't
Very
hear it.
quiet, isn't it? So do you see the agenda, gents?
Yes.
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 All right. Let's see. Got lots of participants. It looks like we can go ahead and call this to order at 7:02 and do a roll call. So speak up if you're here, gentlemen.
Poland's here.
Glenn
Robertson here.
Note Kierkegaard is here.
And Burl is here. Okay. Let's do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, great. All right, we've got quite a bit of discussion tonight, so I'm going to kind of move along if we can. We'll see. And we also have a guest from CSDA for public forum, so we'll get that when the time comes. So first thing is to adopt the agenda for tonight. We have minutes from February 22nd, the usual committee reports, public forum. Old business is, again, minimum budget, income options, obstruction mitigation, RFP for fuel, gutter repair request. And new business is district policy procedure training review, multi-aircraft resolution, and resolution 88-8 to see if we're going to pursue any of those. And then to discuss the merits of pursuing another ballot measure as part of the fee possibilities, and need and type of airport vehicle proposal. And we've had several inputs from the residents written, so we'll have to read those at that time. And that's it. Any comments on the agenda or changes necessary?
No comments here.
Okay.
No. I'll move that we adopt the agenda as is.
Second the
Okay.
motion.
We can second that, and so that's an aye.
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 Okay. Minutes from February 22nd. I may be a bit behind tonight on having all of these files readily at hand, but let me see if I can get it up for those. Unfortunately, I gotta get out of this. There we go. I don't have the minutes readily at hand. Does someone have them handy, or I'll look for them?
I do. Let's see if I can.
I can look for them, but it's probably quicker if you have them.
I have them up if you want me to share.
Yeah, go ahead and share.
Okay. Back to the screen here, and you will need to disable.
Okay, I didn't, yeah, it should be okay now.
Okay, so you should see them on the screen.
I do, yep.
Okay, so they go through it. The agenda was adopted. Some corrections to the minutes from the previous, the January 25th meeting. Copy and paste errors. Committee reports. And just verify that Canute, did it reflect what was said?
Yeah, looks good.
Okay. Airport managers report. Update on the contracts, service hours. Public comments, cops and routers is the primary thing, and then also the lights on event. Comment so far. And we talked about the RFQ. And we tabled a series of motions. Except for the RFQ for the fuel system. Yeah, airport layout plan, pavement condition assessment. For the streets and a separate one for the runway taxiways were tabled. Any comments, updates?
Looks good to me.
Gary, I
Looks good.
can't remember. I thought Burl said from the last one when we had the public comments that we were going to try to, or could we not get the cops and riders on the agenda for this because we couldn't last time because it was too close in time. But I don't think Burl said it's on the agenda for this week. Is that
No, I think I forgot. We can bring it up in public forum and see if there's any updates.
okay? Sounds good.
Okay, with that, make a motion, we adopt the minutes from February 22nd.
I'll second that.
Yeah.
Ayes,
Aye.
Aye.
Hi.
minutes from February 22nd are adopted. Brill, I'll stop sharing. And turn it back to you.
All right. Okay, minutes are adopted. So we're to committee reports. So go ahead, Canute, on the finance situation. There were some things going over budget. Do we know any more about that? That was the only question I had on finance.
Say that again, Burl. What was on the budget? Oh,
There's some things that were popping up above our restricted budget, and the question is, do we understand those, or do we need to do some more sniffing to?
I've been sniffing around. I understand some of them, and we can discuss them when we get to the old business about underfunded items, I guess. So I could bring it up there. And some of them seems to be, for example, that CAL FIRE expenses and what we pay them to come and help us is put under repair and maintenance of the airport, not under mowing and or obstruction mitigation. So that would explain some of the discrepancies we have there. There's a few minor items that's been put on residential maintenance, but we haven't spent any money on residential side maintenance, so that needs to be moved back to the airport. So that's kind of the level. The rest of it looks fairly reasonable so far, what I've been digging into. I've been going through the general ledger item by item for each account and seeing if it's allocated correctly, but I'm not completely done with that. So, but the main thing I see so far is the CAL FIRE expenses. I think are misplaced in the account it's in right now. But that would deduct the mowing expenses, which is the one where we have a lot of money left in the account and we have very little left in the maintenance account.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Do you want me to share the actual financial statements for February?
Do you want to go through those?
I don't have to. I can do it real quick. There hasn't been much change in February, so
Okay.
we can do those in March. There will be more changes than if you want to wait till then.
All right, sounds good. I guess we're up to AMR, Mr. Kevin.
All right. Let's see. Do you have a copy there, Burl? I can share mine.
Go ahead and share yours. Is probably more efficient with what I've got going on here.
All right.
You should be enabled. Yeah.
I'm unable. Let's see if I can figure out how to do this here. All right. So greetings, everybody. Quick, just the highlights as usual. Tenants, as you can imagine, we're full up here, and I just started making a hash mark on the wall for calls each week, looking for a hangar, and we're kind of clicking in at about 2 to 3 calls, usually from people in the Bay Area looking to bail out from down there and head into the hills. And it seems like one of the main qualifiers for those guys is whether or not they can find a hangar, and they're a bit slack-jawed when they can't find a hangar anywhere in the state. If you look at the manager's report, I've got almost 2 pages of just fuel data. So that's there for an FYI. I won't drag you through it all, but straight line extrapolation for March, we may be up 20% relative to last year, month to month comparison yet again. So we were down a bit in February, but even with the rain, March is looking pretty good, and it looks like the next week or so is going to be good flying weather. So it looks like it might be pretty good for us in terms of sales. There is an update to the wholesale pricing of fuel. It's pretty ugly. We haven't had this high of prices since December, November of 19. So it's pretty high. There was a little bit of a couple penny backslide today, which we'll take whatever we can get in favorable wholesale pricing, but we're still looking at $4.80 to $4.90 $4.90 per gallon the next time we take a load. That's what you'd see at the pump. And with that pricing, we would be a little bit above average in the area. There's a chart in there that shows the usual pricing against a lot of the airports in the area that have similar configurations, self-serve, 100 low lead, small airports as opposed to the full service guys. On the system end of things, we've had a couple of blips since the last report. Pump number 2 still has its pressurization gremlins. The repair guys, I think, have been looking at that and chasing it for years. It's still part of being patient and waiting for the system to go through its pressurization checks, but then at the same time, there seems to be a timeout between the pressure check and then the length of the time that it takes for the merchant bank point of sale pedestal to do its routine. So we're chasing that a little bit. And then it had some network issues. So we did a little bit of just finger poking with swapping slots for the modem card and a couple of rewirings of connectors for the phone lines into the terminal block, but that seems to resolve. And then finally, once we got that figured out, the counting wheels, the metering wheels that you see the white lettering on the black, that when you pump the fuel, they go rolling by, wouldn't zero out. So if you ran your credit card, flip the handle on the pump to pump your gas, you'd hear it whirring to go back to zero, but the numbers would stop at 3, 6, 5. It's kind of like a slot machine. We got that figured out today, but the whole point of saying all that is it's a very fragile system at this point, and I think its days are numbered, but it's working right now. 2 working pumps. In just under the office, what's going on inside the door here when it's raining out? It's still cleaning out a lot of just old files and old receipts, trying to dig down to the important stuff. And as a result of that, this time, if you go to the finance tab on the district's website, we've posted all of our financial audits going back to, I think, 2012 or 2011. So there's a bit more financial transparency that's up there. If people don't have anything to do late at night, you can go back and look at those, but it's nice to have them. Also in there is that's surfaced is a copy of what I think is the work that was done on the 05 master plan attempt. It went down in flames, but nevertheless, there's a lot of good information in there, plus a complementing report by an engineering company called Brown and Bunton that has some airport history in it, which is a side project that I was taking on, trying to draft kind of just a timeline of the airport, starting from the Hollister Ranch days coming forward. And I don't know why that was commissioned, but there's some good stuff in there, and I'll try to have that in a digestible fashion here before too much longer. On the airport ops, and then I'll kind of wind down. I'm going to be gone next week, so we'll have some board of director coverage. Be nice to them. Don't break anything while I'm gone, especially the fuel system. The gate here at Miraloma, kind of like the fuel system, is showing its age, and I think that's just having the electronics out in the weather, even if it's well contained. So in the past month or so, we've replaced the power transformer for the card reader. And then this last time around, we had to put a new motor in the initiating capacitor was replaced. Didn't break the bank, but again, just kind of chasing little gremlins in the aging infrastructure. The last thing I think I'll call attention to is I had made a run at recovering use of our 3 or 4 tie downs that in front of the hangars here. In the course of the obstruction mitigation exercise, we've established, the board and myself, reasonable, professional relationship with the regulators. So we've been able to engage in just some dialogue on how we can better use space here, and especially off airport. We've had good conversations with the guys regarding the trees up on the hills and around the airport. On an airport, they're a little more by the book, completely cordial, very professional. Enjoyed talking to these guys. I learned a lot, but you don't get away with much. They don't have much wiggle room. Let's not say anybody's getting away with anything, but they don't have as much discretion. So the bottom line was emppennages of airplanes hanging off of the tarmac here in front of the hangars out over the ditch is a no-go. It's in the runway object free zone, and used to be called the protection zone. So virtually 360 degrees around the airport, we have penetrations or encroachments. And the philosophy there is, sins of our father doesn't mean we get to add more trouble to it. So further encroachments are always going to be an issue. So it's sad to lose those, not so much that the 150, 225 bucks a month, not that we couldn't use it here on the airport, but has implications for the other idea that I was floating, which was to put hangars way, way down at the south end. And the go round there with the analyst was, look, if you can't hang an aluminum fin in the encroachment zone, there's no way we're going to let you build structure. But the gentleman's advice, which I was pleased to get, was let's not file a formal 7460 there, because then it's in your record. He says, who knows, things may change. There may be another day down the road when somebody new might look at those a little bit differently. So the advice was, don't file. Here's the way I would put my black spot of death on your application, so don't do it. So we don't have a score against us, but there's an image there that shows what I was thinking of, and for now that's kind of dead in the water, which is tremendous bummer drag, of course, because I've got more than enough people to go into those hangars as they sit.
Hey, Kevin, just as a curiosity, is there any indication about how much those exceed? Or is it just in the airport areas? Even if you buried them underground, it wouldn't do anything?
No, I don't know about that, Terry. We certainly didn't get there, in like every project, including the fuel system. He's bound to opine on what you submit. So if we wanted to go to the extent of what would be those ultimate heights if we graded, took that whole swell out of there, did all that kind of stuff to lower it, I think you would obviate any problem with part 77. What you wouldn't obviate is that you have structure on the ground in the runway clear zone. So going underground, I don't know, that might be something different, but
Yeah, I was thinking, I was going to suggest that keep a file of these things because they're useful down the road and knowing what the deal is. And I think the problem is it's in the airport overrun, so it doesn't matter how high it is. It's going to be a no-go even though it complies with 77.
correct. Yeah, it's the part 77. We're really familiar with that just because of all the tree work. But there's this whole other category when you're on the ground within X number of feet of the runway that you're not supposed to have anything in there except for maybe lighting or something like that.
But good try. I mean, we're basically, what we're saying is we've tried everything we can think of to squeeze any more revenue space out there, and we don't have any room. So that's kind of the summary of that discussion in some simplistic sense.
Yeah. So that's it for me, Burl. Everybody, the PDF of the report with a lot of other little topics is in there. It's available on the website for download. If you have any questions, as always, just give me a shout.
Yeah, just a quick question, Kevin, the pump number 2, that's kind of old. Is that kind of in a potential of just dying completely, or just kind of keep fixing it?
Well, it's been getting by for a long time. I don't think it has broken to the extent that if you're not patient and hold your mouth just right, that it will eventually pump fuel. So I don't know if I have a good answer for that without tearing the whole thing down.
Just wonder if it's in a kind of a risk item out there, or.
Well, it's a risk item. The problem we have is it hasn't been positively identified whether it's mechanical or electronic yet. It could be that we're having a issue with the driver boards in the credit card reader not enabling that pump motor to run, or it could be clearances in the pump, such as a end play or something that gets out of whack and then it won't develop pressure for a while. And we don't know which it is, but either event, you don't want to have to pull that pump until the absolute last resort, because then you're in a big deal,
Just about the revenue space you mentioned, Bill, what if we converted the tie downs to T hangers or something else? I don't know.
Well, I
just
think
to
those potentials exist, yes, absolutely, or cover them.
Yeah, cover them, exactly.
Would be a possibility, and I think we might consider doing some kind of a solar credit thing if we cover them with solar panels, like
Mhm.
Walmart, Placerville, or something like that. So I think we should not pursue that, because then we can raise the cost, obviously, if you have covered parking versus tie down. But
Right.
as far as creating more physical areas we can
Right.
develop, I think we're pretty well stuck at this point.
Yeah.
Okay, procurement and contracts, as Kevin mentioned, we've wrapped up the service contract both for the fuel system and for the Miraloma Gate. We're in the midst of the RFP for the fuel system schematic design, and we've gotten a fair amount of action on that. In fact, we're going to get a couple of on-site visits this week. So I think we're going to get some good results on that. There's no other contracts that I'm aware of out or major procurements out at this point.
No.
And volunteer service, there's no data this month. I think we need to address whether we want to continue this or not, or whether we've made our point, because there is an overhead time cost that we haven't been able to really sustain in order to get reasonable data. We can guess, but I think we should consider reviewing this process maybe next meeting to see if we want to continue. I think we've made our case that there's more man hours to run this place than one person, fairly strongly. And then the other is to whether we want to pursue rewarding volunteers in some manner with some sort of acknowledgement beyond what we're doing. So I think we should talk about this next month and see if we want to continue or if we want to tweak it. Because right
Maybe
now,
list the tasks that volunteers take on, I guess, so that.
yeah, because right now it's my fault in not being diligent to collect the data, and also it's a burden on Kevin that we just haven't been able to keep up with. So we need to consider the value versus the cost when we get a chance, maybe next time. Okay, we're at the public forum, public comments. As I mentioned, we've got several written comments. If people want to make a verbal comment, I guess this would be the time where they can wait until we center it. I think it's centered around the discussion of the possible procurement of an airport vehicle, all of them that I've seen. So, but if there's another subject, bring it up now. And then I believe, did he make it to the meeting? I didn't see all the list of people here to talk about CSDA real.
Yeah, Dana's here. Might be a good time
Yes.
for him to chime in.
Yeah, him to jump in, and then anybody else, as they think of something when he's wrapped up, let us know.
Great. Well, I can go ahead. Good evening, everyone. Dane Wadley. Again, I'm the CSDA field coordinator for El Dorado County. Obviously, you guys are a member of CSDA and coming up on a year now already. But just wanted to come back on, give you kind of a brief update, as I did last year, on some of the legislative items that we are working on behalf of special districts. So the main thing for us right now is COVID funding, specifically for special districts. You guys, of course, are unique in that you're one of the few special districts who have received funding through the CARES Act for COVID impacts, and obviously there's money for airports in the recently passed measure as well. But for most of our special districts, there has not been funding specifically for them. So we are now trying to work basically with the state legislature and potentially the county as kind of a next step to try to get some assistance for special districts. So more information will be on that. We also too, there was some talk, CSDA signed on to a letter a few weeks ago about, there was talk about potentially delaying the property tax revenue that districts and local agencies receive. Obviously, you guys receive some property tax revenue, and that would not be good. But long story short is that we were able to, I think, stop that and get that off the table. So that's obviously some good news. The other thing legislatively in Sacramento we're very involved with right now is a number of bills related to the Brown Act and public meetings. So, obviously our meetings structure has changed quite a bit with COVID, right? We're all doing these virtual Zoom meetings. And there's various kind of proposals as to how to, have public meetings and what they would look like going forward, kind of post-COVID, assuming we open back up and we can have in-person meetings and all this. One of the bills that we're concerned about, and I'll forward the information on to Kevin for distribution to the full board and to the community, but AB 339 is a bill that we're concerned about. This bill would basically say, even if you guys, when you go back, you can have in-person meetings, you would also have to have a format or an infrastructure like this. As part of your meeting, you'd have to do translation services and closed captioning and all these new requirements essentially for a public meeting. And also, of course, it would be unfunded. The state would just pass this and they would not provide a funding stream for it. So the districts have to come up with it. So, obviously we want to facilitate, public access and transparency like every other local government. And it's very important to us, but there's a balance to, in our view, in terms of the costs and the responsibility we place on districts and certainly smaller districts, as I think you can appreciate. So certainly a little concerned about that. All these bills are still early in the legislative process right now, so we'll see how a lot of these things end up shaking out over the next few months, but at least wanted to put that on your guys' radar right now. We're having our legislative days, a virtual event in May, so I can send you some information that as well. You can kind of get even more background on the bills and whatnot. So those are the main things, though. Like I said, just wanted to come on and give you a brief update on some things that we're looking at. Happy as always to answer any questions here or certainly offline as well. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Dane, for coming up. We appreciate it and appreciate what you're doing in the legislative area. A few of us participated in a recent webinar on fees, which I think was very well done and may lead to some things we're going to talk about. Well, definitely lead to some things we're going to talk about tonight, but we appreciate that. So I guess the best we can do is keep us posted, and we'll react as we can when something comes up.
Might jump in. This is Kevin. Just say, for those of you who don't know, the CSDA is the California Special Districts Association, and for not a whole lot of money in terms of a membership fee, we just get a ton of useful information in terms of small government management tools, education, and that sort of thing. So we lean on these guys heavily in kind of both the self-help and online these days education process. So it's really cool to be part of them.
I'm here.
So Dane, I got a question for you. So that
Sure.
sounds like it came from the CARES Act during Trump's term. And with the latest stimulus package that was just released, is there funds for I guess we would be considered a non-primary airport? There going to be funds for the non-primary airports in this next stimulus, or do you know yet?
Yes, so that's my understanding. I think there's $100 million that's been made available, nationwide for various airports. I have not been able to find. I was frantically searching for it, trying to find information specifically to you guys. I have not been able to find out that, but I think you guys did you get like $30,000 for the CARES Act last time?
Yeah, let me help you out, Dan. We got 30 in the first round and 13 in CARES Act 2.
Okay.
But we haven't got the money yet, so we're in the process of, that's through FAA's allegation, and I think CSDA is rightly working to see if special districts get something, and that's the interesting one that we don't know whether we're going to get anything or not.
Yeah, I mean, again, there is a pot of money, as I said, that's available to airports like you guys. I just don't know the specific breakdown for you guys. And the new one that was just passed.
Right. I don't know if it's going to reflect on aviation, but I know from the healthcare side of the fence, California only got 4% over the last two stimulus packages. And there was promises on this one, it was going to be much higher. I'm hoping that reflects also on aviation, but we'll see. Because I guess California was not a part of that due to some political reasoning. What I'm hearing of why California was stepped aside on the last two, but hopefully this time we'll get a little bit more, but we'll see.
That's interesting. Yeah, I can tell you in other aspects, California is doing quite well. So for instance, just the state in general is going to get like around 25 billion from the latest federal measure that was just passed. Counties are getting, El Dorado County, let me look at my notes here. El Dorado County specifically is getting $37 million.
Yeah.
So there's money that's out there.
Yeah,
certainly
this
being
one
made
was
available.
supposed to be really big for California. That's what I'm hoping it extends to aviation as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Dane. Yeah, and again, if you people have questions for him, you can route them through Kevin. We have the contact info. If you're not a direct member, it's a little harder to get to him, but we can. So if something comes up you want to know about districts, let us know.
Sure.
A couple things we forgot to thank specifically the people that put on the air show and dinner for the turning the lights on. Jeff Robertson's wife, who doesn't want to be named, the Beckers who fed a whole lot of people, and Julie Clark and Mike Weber, who flew around and only got one really bad phone call. The rest of them were very positive from their air show. And so thank you to everybody that was involved in organizing that. I think it was a lot of fun, and it got people kind of out and about and sort of showed we're still an airport and we're still here. And I think that was a very positive event. So we'll try to do some more of that stuff. And then Dan, you wanted to mention cops and routers. I think there was discussion on and off about schedule, but I think you're pretty well tied into doing it in September sometime. There were suggestions to do it in August to try to enhance the availability of warbirds and other heavy hitters as far as that kind of thing. But I believe the ship has sailed on that, given a lot of the other circumstances. But we appreciate, or they appreciate, at least being asked and having that information for the future.
Yeah, because Brett asked me, and thanks, Burl, for putting it out there, asking folks to comment to me, and I only received 2 that saying no. Received about 5 or 6 from people saying they did not want it August; it's too hot. So, and I conveyed that over to Brent, saying there was more people saying yes, they'd rather have it in September than for folks that did not want to do it in September, would rather do it in August. And so I just wanted to be fair and say, hey, that's not that many comments, honestly, that came directly to me, except for that. And so it was about 5-2. And so, and I conveyed that to Brent. And so I think Brent's on, right, Brent? And we're, so you guys move forward and is confirmed now for the September 18th. Is that correct?
We pushed our information through to the county, and we're still anxiously awaiting approval, which in this day and age of COVID is taking some time. So we didn't want to mess with the date too much past the point we forwarded to the county, and also we were pressed for time to get that accomplished. So hopefully we get that information back shortly, but it's been, I believe, since about a week before your last meeting that we've had our information to the county, and we're, again, just waiting for their approval. And we do know that the fair was approved for the weekend after the 18th, the final weekend of September. So even the fair had to push back out of the summer months because they wouldn't have gotten approval to have it during this COVID issue.
Are you guys basically doing the same format, same basic idea as you've done in the past? Or are there any changes we should be aware of as far as the conduct of the event? If so, let us know as soon as you know, and we can deal with those as they come up.
Sure. Yeah, we're looking at basically the same event. Dan was going to be involved in possibly having.
Oh, you went mute, Brent.
Unmuted now. Yeah, Dan was talking about being involved with his band. So maybe a little bit larger crowd for the band, but it'll be just like it was in the past.
Okay.
Everything's the same.
All right. Thank you, guys. Thanks for coming in and letting us know. Sorry I didn't get it in the agenda, but I think we got the message across. And as things firm up, let us know and we'll make sure we announce so that people are aware.
Awesome. Thanks, bro.
Any other public forum, public comment while we're here? We got a lot of public tonight, so that's good turnout.
You know, bro, really quick, if it's while we got Brent on here, I see a lot of new faces and new neighbors. Hi, guys. If we could just briefly talk about what the cops and riders do, because I think a lot of people in the neighborhood don't even really know. Is that okay? I don't know. I don't want to take up too much time.
Because of the other stuff we got to do tonight, I would suggest just put together a summary and we'll distribute by our email. That would be.
Oh, that would be great.
Pseudo flyer and just inform them what the impact will be on them.
Okay.
I think that would be more efficient. We can send it to everybody that's including the newbies that aren't here.
That would be great. Do we go just through Kevin with that then, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's what we can do is be a portal for information. So
Great.
whatever you want to do, you could take the last flyer and we could add a few paragraphs about what it does to them for aircraft street access on that day and then send that out. I think that would be more efficient.
Sounds good.
Hey, Burl, David Shelton here. Just a quick update on that caretaker permit application.
Yes, sir.
So yeah, some of the board members might already be aware, but one of the snags is basically since 2012, the rules have required signing a navigation easement as a condition of new development or discretionary permit, such as the one that we applied for. And in this case, the county's navigation easement allows them to destroy any structures that penetrate the Part 77 surface. And because of the location and elevation of this property, that would allow the county to destroy all the existing structures and to prevent any future construction. So we're still trying to work that out. From what I've gathered, basically the only way that the county could legally do that is through eminent domain. So if the structures do have to come down, there is a path to that, but that requires compensation to the owner. And but they basically can't take that right by force through a navigation easement without compensation. So we'll see if we'll see how that gets resolved.
Yeah, the protection, I've thought about that and I understand that there was never a clean 7460 on that when it was built in 2005. I hear ambiguities there. The suggestion would be to put on the seller that they come up with a clean obstruction, no hazard determination from FAA.
Well, I don't think that they could come up with a no hazard determination, and it looks like there are several dozen buildings that would also be incapable of having a no hazard determination. So it looks like if the county did want to take that down, they can, but again, it has to go through eminent domain and not be taken without compensation through a forest navigation easement. So that'll have to get resolved somehow, but we'll see. That's it.
Very good. Thanks for the update.
Yep.
All right, well, let's move on then. The old business. Again, we're discussing the minimum budget amount, specifically underfunded activities. Let's see, do you have this where you can get to it, Knut, or do I have
I
to
do. If you could let me share, I can.
Yeah, let me let you share. And I think what I want the board to do is look at these activities and decide if these activities are the ones you want to move forward on to fund in one way or the other. And if there's something missing that you think should be on here, let us know. The amounts are a little bit soft, but I think in aggregate, it's a good number. So that's kind of my theme and keep continuing to bring this up because this is going to drive whatever happens with attempts at fees or income or another measures is basically our needs. So if the board can take a look at these and say, yeah, or whatever, let us know. That's what we're really trying to do.
It may not be the best layout design, but the way you read this, on the left columns from A to D, are the projects that are completely unfunded in the 2021 budget. And we are looking to fund that in some way because we believe all of these are needed projects. But just to go through them real quick, at the moment we have a legal requirement on auditing, and we do it biannually, which is $10,000 at the moment. So we need to, if not now, 5,000 this year, we need to come up with 10,000 for the next fiscal year. Currently, our manager fell below the exempt salary minimum, so now he's hourly paid. To bring him back on exempt salary, you have to come up about $4,000 to $5,000. Airport vehicle is on the agenda tonight, so I don't want to talk too much about that, but that's the amount that's requested, or not to exceed that amount in the project request. We talked about we need to get an understanding of the airport layout plan and how we can move ahead of that and potentially get a grant to do that, because that's going to be required for any future grants we may want to apply for from the FAA or Caltrans. We have some projects that are required pretty much immediately in the near future, which is fuel hoses are expiring in a few months and have to be replaced every 10 years. And that's coming up. Actually, it's in next fiscal year, so we could push that one into next fiscal year if they survive that long. As Kevin pointed out, the point of sale system, we know it's 19 years old. There's no maintenance on it anymore. So if it does fail, we will need to upgrade. The minimum bid we've got so far is about $12,000, which is to update the current system to a modern credit card reader and touchless and all that good stuff. And it'll be compliant with the credit card and bank requirements that they have now.
Just to clarify, to understand that, you're saying if our system just tomorrow goes, belly up, the black screen of death kind of thing,
Right.
there's no fixing it because it's just too old, it's obsolete.
Yes.
We have
Yes,
to.
Fuel Master does not repair those anymore. I don't know if there would be any third vendors that would want to repair those or anything, but Fuel Master do not. So they have an upgrade plan where we can move to the new card readers that they have, and that would be, and then that could be for a minor additional amount can be upgraded to that EMV compliant credit card reader that will be required of gas stations going forward.
Does that still have a modem system and dial-up like we have now, or is that?
Well, that's the thing, actually. If we do replace the credit card reader, it will be cheaper going forward because the annual fee will be less. We do have 2 landlines we don't need to maintain, which is quite a huge amount of money. So the maintenance cost going forward will drop. I think we've seen about $2,000 to $3,000 a year. So it'll earn itself in pretty quickly. We just don't have the money to upgrade at this point, but it'll be a forced upgrade when it does fail. And unfortunately, Kevin has seen now that we have episodes where the modem dial-up has showed signs of failure there.
So the risk item there, it may not be, we talk about the underground tanks and stuff, and that's obviously the big risk and big cost number. But if our current, so you're saying if our current point of sale system just dies tomorrow,
then we'll have to get the fly swatter out, I guess, and do manual sales of fuel.
Yeah, you'll end up having to do, you won't be able to do 24/7 fuel. You'll have to do it when somebody's available to run the credit cards.
Just hardware maintenance, I'll mention that both with the pedestal, the point of sale pedestal, and the dispensary unit, the techs when they come here are pulling out, they're cannibalizing parts off of other systems. They're not opening a box of new old stock and fixing our equipment. They're, it's like a cyborg type of thing. They're taking apart other products to steal parts. It's kind of like owning an airplane.
Yes.
Kevin and Canute, this is Jeff.
Yeah.
talking to these vendors for these point of sale systems, since our bank accounts are such as they are, have we inquired about, like financing them over 2 years or anything like that could?
I have not asked about that, so I have not. What we have at this point is just an upfront payment of a new system or replacement system for what we have, and it seems to be in the range of 12 to 14,000. And no, I have not asked about if they have any payment plans for that. I think the good side, if we do upgrade, is that we will save a lot on maintaining old infrastructure like landlines and modems and things like that going forward, so that in that sense we'll recoup the money pretty quickly, or recover it, I should say. But I can look into that too, so if we have any finance. Okay, so of unfunded projects, that adds up to about 41,000, or if you want to look at it as that would be $25 a month per property if it was a special tax that was added. The board did approve funding on the fuel system project. We did find money for that by cutting back on some other operational expenses, so that's moving forward right now. And as Burl said, we have some come out and make a visit to the airport in this coming week here. Unfunded or not fully funded items, we cut back on some of the operations because we needed to fund mowing equipment and spraying, and then we needed to add an additional $5,000 to obstruction mitigation. And we may actually need an additional 5,000 before this fiscal year is over. So last fiscal year, we spent about $20,000 on obstruction mitigation. So far this year, we've spent $12,500. And we know that there's more trees, as Burl mentioned, and some big ones at that too. And then the other thing is, I think some of the expenses we have really need to be assigned to this, like the CAL FIRE, in-kind donations and so forth. So
Yeah.
we may need to allocate additional funds for that account.
And the concern with obstruction mitigation is we have hostile, non-cooperative property owners that we're pressing at right now. And if we get a go-ahead, we want to be able to move. We don't want to wait 6 months or 4 months to the next fiscal to kick in, because they'll change their mind back to the negative. So we're trying to make sure we have a sufficient pot to react quickly when we get a nod in the positive direction for these hostile properties that are off airport primarily right now.
Yeah. So you can see, if you look at the far right column here, column 8, you can see how tight our budgets are, right? So for repair and maintenance of the airport, we have $616 left for this fiscal year. As I said, some amounts have been misplaced on the wrong account, so that'll recover probably about $1,500 there, but still $2,000 for any kind of repairs at the airport. We have $164 left for airfield systems, which is like the AWAS and landing light systems, and fence and gates, $500. So it all looks very bleak, and we still have 4 months left of this fiscal year. So that's why we have requested to restore some of the amounts that we reduced these accounts by in order to make money available for mowing and spraying. It does look like mowing and spraying is not been as much as we thought it would. I don't know if there's any outstanding expenses for equipment or if some of that was donated, but I think maybe we could recover a little bit there. But again, it's pretty tight. So we have $15,000 from CARES Act to this fiscal year that the board needs to decide how they want to.
I don't really know. You were listening to it with me, remember? We're on speakerphone with him.
I'm sorry. Oh, is that?
I'm gonna leave this meeting.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's not, okay.
The CARES Act.
Yeah, so we have the $15,000 from the CARES Act, and I think the board needs to decide how that money needs to be allocated to increase operational expenses, or to fund some of these unfunded projects like airport vehicle or credit card system. I think that's what I have, Bill. So, anybody have any questions?
The the mowing, the $5,000 some months ago we authorized for the tractor. That's
Yeah.
already paid.
That's what I'm not sure about. I can't seem to find it in the financial statements. So we had 8,000.
I believe all of that has been paid. We'll have to find out where it got allocated to. It may have gone to the wrong pot.
Right. I think that's what may have happened. So,
but I don't believe at the moment any of those bills are outstanding for the equipment that was requested.
Okay.
Right.
So as Knut said, there's probably some leeway in that pot to redistribute.
Exactly. So as you can see, at the end of February, we've only spent about 1,400 some on mowing and spraying in this fiscal year. So it either ended up in a different.
I suspect some of the funds that were expended on equipment went to the wrong place.
I'll keep digging on that, Bill. So I'm going through the GNL right now. So, General.
Unless the receivers never cashed the checks. I don't know if that happened, but as far as I know, that was all.
Well, it gets accounted as soon as you write the check, not when it's cashed, I guess. All right, so that's what I have right now. So just for funding the minimum required projects and restoring some of the operational expenses, we are probably talking about 50K, and we have 15 from CARES, I guess.
Yeah, so is this the list? That's the question for the board. And are we missing something? Do we need to take something off of this list? What is the
hangar door repairs, is that covered under hangar maintenance?
That's basically what hangar maintenance means. There's also some roof leaks and stuff we need to look into. And we're behind on getting hard numbers for that, but I think we need to leave it alive because we do have some damaged lift mechanisms and stuff. We need to make sure those are all done correctly.
Understanding we don't have real good numbers, but any ballpark numbers?
We don't have good numbers. The other thing we talked about was we need a survey of the condition of the runway, taxiways, and streets, right, in order to come up with a reasonable amount.
Moving forward.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's probably, I could throw a few thousand out, but we prefer to get a real number versus continue just to throw these. And I volunteered to look at hangar maintenance and tie downs recently, so I will follow up on those two. And
I was also taking a look at tie downs, the chains and specs.
yeah, well, if you want to finish up tie downs, I'll go after hangar maintenance.
Okay, sounds good.
But it gives an idea of where we're at right at this very moment with things that are likely not to make it the next 4 months, and then other things that we consider high priority to pursue. So that's where we're at. Okay, any other questions from you guys? No?
We're just trying to process it. I just had on this list here, there's some items on here that could, I guess I worry about the point of fuel system that goes up. We say we just go to a credit card system with somebody has to be there to process it. Though. Yeah,
we lose 24/7 coverage, and who wants to sit out there and do credit cards? That's our option in some form or another.
I don't think we'll get volunteers to sit at the picnic table with a credit card reader.
Like Knut said, I think the hoses we can push to next fiscal because the hoses on visual are in pretty good shape, but they're timing out. So I think that could be pushed off the list from my perspective.
Mm-hmm. Is that a mandatory replacement?
It's a soft replacement, but it'll get us in trouble if we don't follow up on it. exempt salary will cost us more than this the longer we go without it, in administrative fee and overtime potentially. Legal, we don't have any choice. RFP, I guess we could push out. I mean, you know, we're not there yet, so, but eventually we're not going to be able to process
Right.
any reasonable grant request without having this in process, so. So those are the decisions, and we need the board feedback on how do you want to work this as we move forward here.
When I know you're going to talk about the RFP, but I think the bids went out. We should see what they come back with in terms of. the
Yeah,
dollar.
well, I'm optimistic 5 should be more than sufficient for that, for the scope we're asking them to do, so. And I think they're due back pretty soon, so we'll find out what that looks like.
I don't know. I think this is a good list. We've had a lot of discussion surrounding these type of items, and this consolidates it.
And my thought is with, you know, the only revenue we have coming in is 15,000. Is that, did I understand that correctly? And we don't have that yet. And so.
Oh, we do have that. So
Oh, we do.
Oh.
Okay.
that's the
Well,
board decided that the 30,000 we got in the CARES, 15 has been allocated to the next fiscal year just to
Right.
have a reserve there. So we still have 15 for this year that's not been included in the budget. So that's
Got it.
why
Okay.
we need to make decisions and prioritize how to use that money on these projects here.
So
yeah, and in theory, we're supposed to get another 13, but we have no status update on that.
Yeah.
Also from CARES.
We have so many items, line items on this that are potentially, you know, catastrophic to the operation of the airport that I think, you know, I'll just use the airport vehicle or the fuel PO. You know, those would both basically wipe us out, and then if we have something else that wasn't expected go down, everybody be pulling their credit cards out. But I mean, there's a couple of real big ticket items that would basically clean out the coffers as far as I can see.
Yeah, and that's the way that's becoming very apparent the way we're living right now, given the age of the equipment, and the potential is there, and it's how lucky do you feel, you know?
Well, yeah, until we get some other revenue streams coming in, I think we're probably gonna have to keep living that way.
Sure.
I know you look for discussion on how do we handle this, bro? I mean, the list I think is good. Well, I continue. I'd agree certainly with Jeff. I think to focus on what, you know, the fuel system is obviously a big major concern because we get a lot of revenue from that. And my concern is if that just goes belly up tomorrow, we need to be able to respond to that to keep that revenue coming, or we just spiral.
And yeah, mine is like the only one that I think is urgent, because it's not broken yet, but it, you know, it is the exempt salary is. I think that's a losing battle not paying that.
I would agree. I think that can get us into trouble too if we don't do that financially and perhaps otherwise, maybe with the state, based on my experience.
Yep.
Yeah, I think the exempt salary's got to be handled to save money. And we know the point of sale system, as Canoe says, if that's what Canoe, the point of sale system can save us, at least 2,000 a year.
Yeah.
Once that's replaced.
But right
Well, you
now
think
it's
about the cost of the landlines we have. I think, or Kevin can correct me, but I think we have 4 or 5 landlines, and this will get rid of 2 of them. And if you look at our expenses on communication, that's a really significant line item in our budget.
Well, I propose what we do is we need to flesh out the other numbers, and we'll get those other numbers, and then I think we should look at the budget picture in the total thing not later than the next meeting,
Okay.
and prioritize these and figure out how to play the shuffle game. And then the balance left is what will have to be obtained through other sources that were not now available to us.
I'd agree with that because it's the hangar maintenance. We got the leaks and the doors, all the things that we've discussed at prior meetings. That can also represent, besides bad hangars, is a liability issue.
That's correct. That's why it's on there.
And so I think if we can get some numbers for those, those, that would help to prioritize.
Okay.
And I say I'll have a number for tie downs.
Okay, I'll chase, we've had a couple vendor recommendations. We'll try to chase those down and get some numbers on hangar.
Yeah, I think that'd be good. This is scary.
I think that's how to move forward. And I think the part of this that's important is for us and the public to realize, it depends on what breaks, where we're at. I think we need to keep working this. I don't think there's any quick answer to it.
I say I'm worried about the revenue sources, the fuel. I mean, if we say we push the hoses out too long and one does break and we spill a lot of fuel, that could shut us down for a while, in addition to the cost of it.
Yeah, it would show that we're not doing due diligence to keep up with stuff.
And it'll affect insurance rates, I'm sure, and so forth. So we'll talk about it next week.
Yeah, I think we need to get into the details of this. We may even consider a special meeting just to get this moving forward.
I think that'd be a great idea. Just we could be hit with something here very quickly. We need to know how to react.
You never know. Yep.
Okay, well, that's what I had, Bill.
Okay. All right, let's get back to the agenda. All right, so that's driving the budget amount issues. Status of income options, I think we can kind of gloss over because we're going to spend a lot of time on that later in the new business. But basically, we're reviewing all possible options as far as income that's legal by a special district. But I think we'll spend some specifics later on that. So I don't think we need to review all of the possible options at this minute.
Yeah, I do have the list of the ones that we discussed, but we can save it.
Yeah, I think we can save it. I think, I think we need to maybe try to figure out which ones we're going to pursue. And that's kind of the spirit of some of the resolutions and stuff coming later. So if you don't see something or you've heard something, bring it up and we'll read the list. But I think, the options.
Well, Kevin here, I just throw out, in the past, I had mentioned that the county was stalled in what they're calling a benchmarking exercise, where they had reached out to a number of local airports looking for various metrics in terms of lease rates and contract provisions and that sort of thing. And the chief administrator's office has picked that task up again. I don't know when they are going to call the checkered flag and call enough data is enough data to write their report, but at least we'll have that kind of meta analysis coming together again. So we'll know what our rent rates are against the market.
Yep. Okay. Obstruction mitigation continues. As I said, we've got some trees that are going to be critical that were noted in the inspection, but weren't enough to stop us yet, but they will next year. Letters have been out, no response. So we're going to have to press those, and they're going to be not cheap to deal with. And then shortly, we're going to be sending residential letters out to update people to get planning on trimming their stuff too. We need to maintain both sides. So That's where obstruction mitigation is. We're at a good spot right now, but it'll be real difficult if we lose ground on the next inspection, which is roughly a year from now. We'd mentioned previously the RFP status is out for review. We've gotten, I think we went out to 6 vendors and we've gotten responses from most of them in one form or another. So we're anticipating a good response to that, and hopefully we'll come up with some things we can then plan to move forward on and then develop a method to this thing. But the RFP basically determines what we're allowed to do as far as system schematic and system location out there, and get it past the county and the various other permit processes. Then we can have a budget, then we can figure out how to fund it. So that's where we're at with that.
Well, I'm sorry, bro. How many did you say do we expect to bid?
4, I think, 3 or 4 out of 7, 6 or 7.
That's pretty close at this point. Some of the bigger players are still vacillating on whether or not the RFPs, kind of big enough potatoes for them to bite. So we've added a couple, like Epic Fuels, our vendor has a design arm. So they're engaged and going to be down here this week as one of the on-site visitors.
Yeah, so we're going to end up with a bid or 2 or 3. So we can chew on that.
Good.
Okay, so for the board, I think we had a request a couple months ago from a resident that's complaining there's an offset between the edge of the driveway and the street gutter of an inch and a half. In my cursory walk around the neighborhood, that seems fairly unique in that I don't see that anywhere else. I see a lot of deteriorated gutter, a lot of patchwork that has been done over the years by different people to make it to work better. The resident went out and got the full appropriate repair, which is basically remove the gutter, remove part of the street pavement, dig it down, recompact it, build it back up, create a new gutter. It's about a little over 10K for the one property. I think, again, I don't really want to just make a off the cuff judgment on what we ought to do or not do, because again, as I'd mentioned a couple of meetings or so ago, we don't have any real guidance or follow up on any of this stuff that's in writing anywhere. But I think we need an action plan on how to deal both with their request, their problem, and maybe the larger issue of gutter determination and condition, because typically the way it works, if you have an offset that's considered a trip hazard, then the district becomes liable for somebody getting hurt. That's the concern, if that indeed is an aspect of this. But then it's a matter of the districts being on the hook for the liability, so the district will do something to mitigate it to a point. But again, we have no policy or anything that establishes what that is. So I think we need to start investigating that stuff and come up with a action plan on how to deal with this before it gets any weirder. Gutters have been a known problem. They've been largely the bigger elephant in the room that's been ignored over the years, in that there is no plan that I've ever found for mitigating or doing anything about these gutters. And I believe, unless I hear different, the district is responsible for the gutters up to the property line of the individual property. So it becomes the district's problem to deal with it. So I guess I'm looking for volunteers to raise their hand and say, oh, I'll work on that.
Well, I can help working on that.
So it looks like you and I, Terry.
Okay.
All right. So we'll go ahead and come up with some draft how to deal with this gutter situation and what constitutes a hazard and the border where the district has to be involved in some form or manner. So I guess that's the action plan we'll follow up on. All right. Business, we need to initiate some policy and procedure training for the district. All these new policies and procedures, including the airport policy procedure, needs to be reviewed by everybody so we're all on the same page. So I think the approach is to pick a time or a series of times, and we'll just take a piece of the policy and walk through it. But I want to make sure that the board is available. They're the primary receivers, and then the public somewhat on district policy procedure, but specifically on airport policy procedures. So my suggestion is to initiate these things starting on the same time as we do the board meetings on a weekly basis till we plow through this thing. We can limit them to an hour each. They're basically a review policy. They're not a dialogue to update the policy. So my proposal, if the board is willing, is to start putting together a series of these things, suggesting Monday nights at 7 and limit them to an hour and start going through these things. So
That sounds great.
That works.
So if that works for generally the board, we'll start off and do these and get to them as many as you can. All right. Now let me talk a little bit about this next one. Since 1989, the district has had an approved policy in place to charge for more than one aircraft per property. It's been largely unenforced and ignored in several states, including the latest in 2017. And there's a variety of potential reasons why it was never enforced or done. So the questions for tonight are, does the board feel it's an appropriate fee to go after? Do we still have legal standing to assess this fee? So we're gonna have to ask or pay to get that determination made to make sure. Then the questions are in the details. How much should the fee be? How is it determined what's a multi-aircraft? And a couple other things. So I threw together a little bit of a history lesson I'll go through quickly, or I'll go through, and we do have a proposed resolution that was a modification of the 17 resolution with some suggested changes. So we're not necessarily, I don't think we're necessarily ready to fully adopt the resolution and start billing people. But I think approval of the process to move forward requires the legal review, and then we will schedule a public meeting some 45 days or so prior to introduce these new fees that have basically new because nobody's been collecting them. So that's the point of this. So I can pop up the actual, let me find it. This thing takes a minute to warm up.
You look for the 2021 resolution? Or the one?
2021 is one we've created from the 17 as to fix the one in 17. So this is a discussion of the potential of an additional fee. So in the background is a multi-airport appropriate wage revenue for the airport. That's the first part of the question is this something we want to pursue? Does it make sense? Is it fair? All that other stuff. So that's the overlying question. The next part is how much should be charged. So I pulled the 3 resolutions that exist to to review the amount. 1989, they suggested 120 per additional aircraft, or 15 a month. And then they allowed, if you have 3 or more, then it goes to 10 a month. So you get a break. They charge more per month than per annual. So I think they were envisioning that if you wanted to pay up front annually, you'd pay less than if you paid per month. So that one was 1989. At the time, 120, I think at 1989, the fee for residential partials was at the 200 level. That was the initial level.
Which if you, inflation would say today's dollar at 120 is probably.
Yeah, well, in ratio to it was not the same as the special tax partial fee, which was 200 at the time, I believe. 2004, they went to 240 per year for each aircraft. If it's monthly, it's $30. So they're charging for the cost to deal with the monthly invoicing. And then if you had 6 or more, then they drop it to 20 per month for each extra aircraft. So these are the amounts. So again, it doesn't seem to be, in 2004, we were up to the 300 per year per partial. This is 240. I don't know the rationale between the 240 or the 120. 2017, a resolution was passed that dropped it back to 150 for multiple aircraft present at least 3 months of the year. We'll talk about more about what defines multi-aircraft. So the fees were kind of all over the place, up, down, and so the suggestion that came through is the FAA, if we ever get to that point, likes to see equitable on both sides, and we're really trying to get to the private properties on the airport side that have access, particularly the 13 T hangars, et cetera, should pay the same as what happens on the resident side. So the proposal that kind of survived the INF discussion was make them all the same. So if you have one aircraft, you're already paying 300 a year, and any additional aircraft is an additional 300 a year. So that's the proposed amount to charge. Open for discussion.
I said, point out that our tie downs at 75 a month, it's $900 a year.
Correct. We're not, yeah, correct.
And just a question on those previous resolutions, the board, the boards at that time sounds like, they went through a process and those were approved.
Yes.
But is there any evidence there was ever an attempt to implement those?
Only for a very sporadic amount of time and very limited and not consistent, as best we can tell from what we can find. And to my knowledge, 17, they didn't collect anything after the board passed it. Maybe 1 or 2 paid out of their honor system, but I don't think there's been any sustained payment of any of them.
And how many potential aircraft do we know does this represent if we do today?
Well,
with just airplane.
Sitting here thinking about it, we've got about 20 to 21 potential aircraft that would comply with this. So if we go to the $300 a year, we're talking 5 to 6K income after we take the expense of doing the invoicing out. So for all this fiddling around, we're talking about maybe a net income annually. So now it gets more entertaining is what's the definition of multiple aircraft and how is that determined? 1989, they just said any aircraft over 1 per partial. If it's not flown, but if it's not flown for 6 months or more, you can tell the district and then it's not counted. And when it's back in service, let them know and it'll be counted. So they didn't go any further on how that's supposed to work. The reason it's screwy is it was a scan off of a PDF, old resolution. 2004, they said any extra aircrafts to any aircraft purpose of the foregoing and extra will be assessed a use fee as the present on the monthly assessment day, the date of the monthly assessment day will vary randomly in the sole discretion of the manager. So the way they did it supposed to do it in 04 is the manager would get up in the morning and say, oh, it's assessment day, drive around and count airplanes, and that would be who would be charged an extra airplane that month. And then they also have the 6-month exclusion to exempt them from that. And then they allowed that they would be partial payments. So if a person claims a refund for a portion of a year, it'll be $30 a month, which doesn't add up to the fee they were adding, but that's what they said they would do. So they were dealing with basically a month-to-month assessment determined randomly on a day of the month by the manager figuring out how to do a count. 17, basically without regard to ownership registration, more than one, multi of 150 per aircraft, will charge against each additional aircraft located on the partial, including pursuant to a rental lease. So if you're leasing your hangar to somebody else, that airplane gets counted also. Typically stored or located shall mean that the aircraft is located upon a partial for more than 8 hours, at least 10 days within a month during at least 3 months. So I think, as far as I know, nobody could figure out what that really meant as far as trying to enforce. So was not bothered to even try to enforce it. And it says multi-aircraft airport user will not be applied to aircraft that are not in current legal flying condition, whatever that is. So the suggestion, again, these are the options, and the suggestion for discussion tonight is aircraft database used by El Dorado County to verify craft location for the assessment of personal property tax shall be used as the basis for these aircraft. A visual inspection will be conducted for aircraft not found in this database. Any aircraft found per the rules in the personal property tax system shall be counted toward the multi-aircraft fee. So the airport district is asked every year to provide a database to the county for them to check their records against for personal property tax. So the suggestion is we're already doing it. Just use that database as the basis for counting airplanes per property. That's the suggestion. And then here's the potential income for all this screwing around. As I said, the 300 per year, if it's agreed that I figured I counted like 21 aircraft-ish. It's about 6,300 gross. There's 6 properties that appear to have this 21 aircraft, so 6 invoices would need to be created. The cost of hiring the bookkeeper who will do this for a mailed invoice and her time and receipt, and that is about $250 per year. If the owners agree to be invoiced by email, we could lower that a bit because it saves the preparation of it. Airport bookkeeping will be used for invoicing collection. Airport manager and other district officers will assist in maintaining the database, meaning keep your eyes open. Additional costs for collection on late or non-payment will be covered from the property owner. So we're in the range. If it's real that 21 aircraft comply with this, it's about $6 grand income. So the modified resolution 21 reflects these choices, but I think we need to discuss these choices and whether we're going to proceed to move forward with this whole situation or not.
And this takes care of the aircraft over in the T hangars on one property, right?
Yeah, because it includes the all district properties, not just residential.
And just to make sure I understand, this puts us in a better position for a potential FAA funding later on with through the fence.
Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. I think just have to, for example, a suggestion was, well, just charge the T hanger guy and not anybody else. And I think whatever we charge him, we got to charge the residential side also. That was
You got to do that on both sides. If we do that on our hangars over there, then you also have to take into consideration the lots that are on the airport that have multiple aircraft on.
Yeah, whatever you charge them, you got to charge us. You know.
Absolutely.
Well, can we refer to the resolution itself? Can we go over to the resolution itself at this point, or do you want to do that later on?
No, it's here. Let me get it. Let me wake it up.
I think you mentioned that the public comments that are coming were all about the vehicle, but we have one that's related to this agenda item.
Okay, if you have it, you can go ahead and bring it up as we're getting here.
Why don't I go ahead and just read it into the record while you're preparing with the resolution, and that way it's recorded for folks
Yeah, here it
that
is.
don't have it visually.
Okay.
All of these public records, as I get them, I PDF them, and they're also available with the other documents on the website. So this one was received today. So here we go. I would like to submit my thought on the item regarding generating additional income by assessing a fee for second and additional aircraft. First and foremost, let me say I am in support of the notion to charge a property owner additional fees for second and additional aircraft each year. I own 3 aircraft. The amount of predicted additional income for additional aircraft is modest relative to the future financial needs of the airpark and airport, estimated at something over $6,000 per year. I believe we need much more income year over year for maintenance and operation. The above being said, I offer some thoughts more general in nature. It was disappointing to see Measure P fail. The owners who voted no, I believe, are short-sighted. Regardless of whether a property owner utilized the aviation-specific facilities or not, the overall level of the quality of the airpark and airport improvements has a large effect on all of the property values here. Whether there is a personal objection to additional fees is not material in the long run. The value of each and every property here will be affected downward if we do not insist on a high level of upkeep. It is old news that the taxiways need a slurry seal and the fuel facility needs updating. There are many other financial needs beyond just those 2 items. The current board has done a very comprehensive study of the financial needs here. I have heard often in discussions with customers and clients the opinions that the overall presentation of this place is substandard. Understand, I am in a unique position to observe the overall opinions of new possible buyers of the properties here, as I am a real estate broker and have specialized in this airpark for over 40 years. Many of the owners here are my past customer. I receive feedback from many of my past customer and clients, and more importantly, future pilots who investigate the purchase of homes and lots here. It is no mystery to me that we cannot achieve high enough sale prices to justify the cost of building a home here right now or in the past. I ask that my thoughts be read into the record and hope that they affect and motivate future votes in the affirmative when and if we pursue another measure such as Measure P. Voting no on a fee increase is counterproductive to all of us, whether we fly or not, whether we are anti-tax people or not. Lastly, if we must fund future maintenance with a bond as in the past, it will generate a huge interest expense, which we cannot use for maintenance and operation. Respectfully submitted, Mr. Dennis Nixon.
Okay, that's applicable. Here's the resolution 2101 draft. This fleshes out and may answer some of your other questions. So the front end of this is pretty much boilerplate from the standard whereases and wherefores. So it says airport district receives funding from special tax. The current special tax is 300. It says the special tax is based on impact upon airport district from the usage of 1 aircraft per partial.
Burl, I'm sorry, can we go back to the previous whereas where it says majority of the funding from a special tax on all parcels? Does that remain true? Is CARES Act factored into that the majority is indeed coming from this special tax?
Well, CARES Act is a one-shot deal that's not gonna continue.
Is it, it's
I
considered
don't
funding?
know, as this is a really very well-written part of this old resolution.
Mhm.
But currently, the partial tax gets us more money than anything, any other individual thing we do as far as revenue. Fuel is about 25K. The partial tax is what, 39K,
38, 39K.
38, 39K. So it currently is the largest individual source of funding for the district at 300 a year.
Okay.
Before we get too far into this, I'd like to make a comment on the whereas that I think is pretty significant. And I'll point it out specifically to Terry, seeing he's the secretary, because I think it's something that you should look at. So it's the third whereas here that says, whereas the Cameron Park Airport District is an air park. Well, to me, number one, the airport is Cameron Park Airport, a public airport. So I think we should change that. This is very significant, in my opinion, to rather than an air park, we should say, whereas the Cameron Park Airport District is a public airport district. And then if you want to get into the air park part, you could say all parcels within the district are provided direct airport access. And so to me, anyway, I see somebody change it, Bill's changing it.
Yeah, I'm
right now.
playing with it so you can see what it looks like.
Yeah, okay. But anyway, to me, the word air park is something that's, in my mind, derogatory. I mean, there's nothing wrong with an air park, but it's a public airport, and the air park just happens to be adjacent to the public airport. And we need to be, I think, a little more professional in what we're operating here. We're operating a public airport. We're trying to do it with a lot of private money and people that live in the air park, but we're operating a public airport. So let's spell it out. I think it's very important. The rest of it, the only other comment I have on the whole other resolution is the part about the fees for whether they pay by email or whatever. And most people like that now, you know, if you pay by email, you don't get charged. If you want to get a bill in the mail, you get charged and you pay for it. So the whole, whatever it is, $6,200 should be all profit, and we shouldn't be deducted 100 and 250 bucks. That's just a minor comment. But anyway, the thing about the air park is, to me, is pretty important. So I'd like to hear some feedback on that.
Yeah, so I went ahead and did that, but I have no particular problem with that, but it's up to everybody else to talk
Sure.
about.
Yeah, I would agree kind of with Don. I don't know if air park is an official term like an airport. I mean, it's just kind of,
I believe at one time it was considered an air park, but at this point, I think changing the verbiage to public airport is probably a very good idea, in that it really puts the reason we're here first.
Yeah. I mean, our official resident name is what, Cameron Park Estates, or
It used to be
something
Air
Estates.
Park Estates. I don't know if that still applies legally.
That's why I bought
No,
my,
don't.
that was on the documents, you know, a couple.
Okay, yeah, but let's stay on the bigger issue of, is a multi-airport aircraft fee something we want to pursue? If so,
Well-
how much, and if so, how will we figure it out, and how will we collect it? Those are the real questions.
Well, one of the things I'm seeing, again, back to the whereas, where it says a special tax is based upon the estimated impact upon airport district facilities from the usage of one aircraft per parcel. Now, the airport district facilities comprise of the runway, taxiways, streets, and hangars. And if someone, while I certainly agree that this airport needs more money, I'm not clear how having more than one aircraft per parcel is impacting the infrastructure to a greater degree than if it's just a single aircraft, because most of these aircraft are flown by one pilot of that household, and you can only fly one aircraft at a time.
That I disagree. That part, Glenn, I disagree with you. We have multiple people on the airport that have multiple pilots flying multiple airplanes.
Mhm. Okay, but still, we're putting that burden largely on the people who are aircraft owners, whereas part of that infrastructure is clearly listed as the streets, and we have a lot of vehicles in here which are not aircraft, whose weight is well in excess of the aircraft, and are probably putting a greater impact burden upon the infrastructure. So my concern is that this resolution is singling out the aircraft owners as being the ones basically responsible for taking up some of this balance for extra wear and tear on the facilities.
Yeah,
Because
That's a good point.
So it's a good point, because I think the $300 per year is not, that's the fee that everybody shares in to operate the airports. That's why we moved here, whether you have an airplane or not.
right.
So
And that $300, correct me if I'm wrong, we can't use that $300 for the streets. It's airport money, correct?
yes, it's a special tax and that has dedicated to the airport.
So and I agree with you, Glenn. It's the way it's worded, where it says runways, taxiways, streets, and hangars. Kind of infers that $300 is going to street upkeep, and it's not. As far as in my opinion, is the $300 is the current fee, which is, I think, woefully low from annual, contribution. But that's a separate issue. But I think this is a good benchmark that we could use down the road for other things, like to address your street issue, usage of the streets and things like that.
Well, I think we can just delete that comment. I mean, it's not necessary to move forward with that comment.
I
We could delete that. We could.
I think this is just a starting point, because
Starting point, yeah, but it's good points to clean this up, because I basically cut and pasted this from the 2017 resolution, and it's
right.
messy. So,
And I think we'll probably end up having a series of something like this,
Yep.
I guess my overreaching concern is that this is this really is singling out one class of property owner in the airport district from another. I mean, everyone chooses to live here. No one is forced to live here.
So I think what you're saying, Glenn, what comes down to it is, it's putting the burden on the airplane owners, although the airplanes are, of course, are the only ones that cross the gate into the airport side.
But everyone does live within this airport district, on this airport district. And I think I'm just also concerned that this has an effect that it's going to move us in really the opposite direction, that that might be beneficial towards the airport, and that is, this is putting a higher burden on people with airplanes and less burden on people without them for an airport district. And we want to encourage more airplanes here. We don't want to discourage it.
Well, the other, the whole purpose, is at least interpreting this, this is an avenue, a method to raise the funds that we need to operate the airport.
And I agree, and I would like to see more methods to raise funds suggested and proposed. But I want to do it in a way that I'm viewing as equitable and long-term productive. This is a drop in the bucket of what we really need, and I think it's I think it's a poor precedent.
But Glenn,
even as a stepping stone.
Glenn, since the money allocated from this fee only goes to the airport, it has nothing to do with our streets. It strictly goes to the airport. If somebody wanted to buy a house in here and use their hangar to build widgets in, this wouldn't affect them anyway.
Mhm.
So it's not really putting an excess burden on airplane owners because we need the taxiway, we need the runway, we need the fuel system. So we're paying extra for that. If I go out and buy 2 more airplanes, I'm going to need that even more. So I'm accepting that burden. But if like I say, if somebody wants to use their hangar to build widgets in, this has nothing to do with them at all, actually.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think the other point that's come up is before we ask the residents for additional fees, right? We should also have the fees for the commercial properties, right, that have 13 airplanes on them or something like that.
Well, that's all tied into this,
Yeah.
they're picked up by this resolution, but. I
Well, let
think-
me ask you that question because I'm affiliated with that. So
Right.
off the T hangers, and I don't care about that. That'll be a pass through. But does that also include that other group of hangars that has the offices above them? Are they
Yes.
paying
Any
fee
property,
now?
has- any property has airport access with more than one aircraft would be picked up by this. in
Okay,
theory.
but my question is, those hangars, are they paying the current fee?
They should be.
Yeah, they're,
Yeah, they just pay 300 per property, however the
So,
property.
so if somebody gets 2 small airplanes and stuffs them in one of those hangars, this would affect them also.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
But I think the point's well taken in that we're trying to promote aircraft ops and aircraft use, and this goes against that to some degree for a useful but relatively, it doesn't solve our problem. So I think that's
Right.
something to really consider as we move forward in developing this or not, you know.
but it helps solve our problem. There'll be other things we're gonna have to look at, of course.
Well, I think, my suggestion is continue to pursue this, but I think this would be a secondary possibility once we're able to invoke a total property fee, which is covers everybody, you know.
Does this account for any exceptions for example, the historical significant exempt clause, or is that strictly property tax? Where
No, it doesn't pick those
it
up.
wouldn't
What
cross over?
it does exempt aircraft that are being initially constructed or they're disassembled for some reason.
Mhm. Okay, would this apply to, say, a glider that's stored disassembled in a trailer?
Probably not, because you don't fly the glider out of here.
Mhm. Mm,
You know, we'd have to interpret that, but I think that could be, that's in the area of how much trouble is this going to be to enforce and chase people down, you know.
I know one thing, Beryl mentions a lot from the FAA's viewpoint is that, and Mike also referred to it, is that equality across the fence. But the FAA also needs to realize that the property on the west side is residential. The property on the east side is not residential, and they're much bigger parcels. And I think most of us all have a little frustration at a big piece of property over there that has all the RVs on it and is not an aviation related property that, in hindsight, we could have bought from Henry Olaski for about $400,000 a long time ago, but that's water over the dam. But the bottom line is that other side over there, it seems like right now they're not paying their share for sure. I mean, that's what I see as the big part of this resolution is the east side, and especially that piece of property, which get taxing airplanes is not going to help us at all because we got about however many RVs are over there. There's a lot of them, but we're not taxing RVs, we're taxing airplanes.
Right.
Let me,
The future of that particular property is, if they go forward with their storage unit, it's going to be blocked from airport access. So that further removes them from being participant in this.
Yeah, but I don't know what the legalities are there, but at one time, that was part of the, it's part of the airport district, and we have never defined the airport district parcels to be, used, whether it's residential side or the other side, to be used, and I don't know if we can legally, but I think we have some options there that we should look at, to say that, hey, we can put special taxes on for, at least investigate. I don't know what we can do legally, but there's a lot of valuable land on the east side that's not getting proper usage by the airport district.
Well, I think this bigger discussion has to go offline of the particular thing for tonight, but I think it's all good stuff. And I think part of our consideration is a public meeting for all this stuff before we move forward in any of these fees. And I think that would be the place for that. I've also got a comment coming in from Dave Becker that let's see what Dave has to say at the moment.
You could ask your legal staff to better reconcile the fairness between a resident who owns 2 airplanes but can only fly one at a time and a property owner that has 12 hangars with 12 pilots and 12 airplanes. There's a way to reconcile that fairness by having the owners certify that there's only 1 pilot in this household, although we have 2 airplanes. That person could be assessed differently than someone who says, I have 12 hangars with 12 pilots and 12 airplanes. Because the way it's worded right now, there is inequity. And so I think that there needs to be further wordsmithing here. But I will also caution everybody that there's no such thing as a perfectly equitable assessment.
Okay, no, that's a good point, because another suggestion that I don't know how to do is base it on hangar capacity or square footage. But that got really ugly quick to me because we have hangars and we have plane ports, and then there's hangars and open tie downs and so that even got uglier to try to come up with a. So
I my comment to David, I think is a very good one. Or, as far as we know, all the tie downs over there have a pilot for each airplane, but you could easily have a situation, somebody owns 2 airplanes and they're tying them down and they're paying the same fee.
But I think where we're headed is, and I think I agree with Dave's principle, is that we're really trying to come up with the people generating revenue for basically they're a resident that's subbing out their hangar or their property for tying down an aircraft owned by somebody else. That's one other issue. And then on the other side, they're basically creating revenue for the property owner by leasing out the space for the T hangars and the other stuff. And if that could be separated legitimately, then that makes sense to pursue that, I think.
Burl, can you go to item 1 on the second page? I think this sort of ties back to the definition earlier, and then this is just a note to maybe wordsmith this one too.
Item 1 on the second page.
Yeah, whereas, oh, wait a minute. Here, whereas a multi-aircraft airport user fee should be imposed in order to fairly distribute the cost of operating the airport district facility among all of its users. And again, if we need to be clear that if we're saying the aircraft district facilities do not include the streets, then singling out the aircraft owners would not distribute the cost among its users.
Yeah, I hear where you're coming from. Yeah, this is not clean in the fact that it's kind of lumping everything into one chunk and not focusing on airport facilities or airport stuff.
Yeah, it ties together to that first one.
Have to make those changes, but
I think the changes are going to take more than we have time for tonight. So I think what I'd like to do is poll the board and see if they feel that it's appropriate to move forward on developing this, or if we want to table it for now and concentrate on something else, or what? That's kind of what we need to do at this point.
I would vote that we continue to pursue this. Yeah, my
I
comment
would,
before is we wouldn't be doing this at Measure P pass, for example, as far as spreading the taxes. But I think given that I'm in favor of continuing to pursue this.
I would vote in continuation of pursuing it. I would also vote in continuation or to move forward to try to come up with additional means other than just the aircraft based.
Oh, we will. Yeah.
I agree. I think this, I mean, the aircraft thing probably needs to look at the baseline rather than being 300 for each property. Probably needs to go up as a airport access fee or something, as well as, like Glenn said, additional fees that let the folks that don't have airplanes contribute to the overall upkeep, which we've talked about.
Well,
before,
that's
too.
essentially what we need to do too. The question is,
Yeah.
do we want to pursue this in any form or whatever?
I think we need to keep pursuing it and just, revise it.
I would agree. I think we need to keep pursuing it, but only as it's very minor compared to the funding that we need, right? So it's only one of them.
It's one of the various sources of potential.
Exactly.
Right.
All right, so
See, one more point, Burl, seeing as the point of this document is to pursue use of facilities not related to the streets, could we put in a resolution for a parallel document which did specifically address the streets?
Yes, I think that's going to come out of this whole thing eventually. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like a
I think that has to come out of this.
Yeah. So for the purpose of the minutes, I think we're going to table this resolution, but we will continue to develop the concept of a multi-aircraft fee process is what I'm hearing.
Agree.
Yeah.
Okay. And then along the same lines, I think we're going to need to ask Dave for a revised legal estimate. There's an existing resolution 88-8. Let me wake it up. It has never been deleted or removed. It's not in great shape because 88 is the formation of the district. So shortly after the district was formed, they put resolution 88 and voted it in, passed, approved, and adopted, that says by vote of the board, it authorizes use fees for maintenance and operation of the district. And then it be it resolved that user fee statements of billing be sent to all owners within the district and appropriate collection invests 60 days. So basically what this says is by board vote, user fees can be sent to all owners for maintenance and operation of the total district.
Total.
Yes. Now, what they did shortly after this was passed is they chose, instead of using the manager for collection, they went to the county and they use the county through the special tax for the collection of this fee. So the question is, does this resolution have in fact any legal standing at this point?
I can give you my no charge legal opinion now.
Yeah, it's probably no.
Yeah, this is wildly unenforceable as it's read under current law.
Okay. Well, that's my understanding, but I wanted to also bring it up because in context of where this district's coming from, and I think we should purge some of these resolutions by a resolution to clean them up as we go along also eventually, to acknowledge that it's not enforceable.
Yeah, this resolution just simply says the special district has the authority to impose user fees That's already in the law, with or without this resolution. So, and this resolution doesn't have the justification in it or the specification necessary to make it enforceable anyway, so it's worthless.
Right. Yeah, it doesn't have the financial support documents and all that other stuff that goes along with it, right?
Right.
Okay. So that answers the question.
Well, that saves a lot of discussion.
Yeah, yeah.
So it sounds like some kind of a motion should be made, though, to get this resolution off the books.
Well, I think it's only one of many that we need to think about.
I'm sure, one at a time.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I've now lost the agenda, so I got to close some stuff, so bear with me for a moment here. There we go. Are we back to agenda? No, probably not.
No.
Good. I love this system. That's probably not it. Is that it?
Nope.
It's in your Windows Explorer.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
You just need to click on the document, it would come.
Yeah, but it's not coming up. What else
Oh,
is?
okay.
Bro, what you could do is instead of sharing the document, share your entire screen. And as long as you could see it, we could see it. So when you click share,
I can bring it up real quick.
Selection.
I've also got it. I could bring it up too.
Yeah, I think you're just getting the junk though, right?
Oh,
There it is. There it is.
There it is.
Yep.
Okay. So anyway, so we've sought legal review on this, and I think that was the motion as to whether this thing is allowed or not, and the word we've heard is no. So I think we've basically complied with what we're trying to do.
I hear clicking, but don't see action.
Yeah, is it moving? Okay.
But yeah, the agenda's moving.
So I think the vote is, we've sought the legal review of Resolution 88, and we have it already. So I think that closes out this discussion item.
Okay, I'll note that in the minutes.
All right. Merits of another ballot measure for increasing fees. So this is open for the board to discuss whether the appropriate fee approach is another ballot measure. Now there is a corollary to this that we just heard about that I think should be part of the discussion. So as I understand our input, which needs to be pursued further, if the board creates another ballot measure and puts it on the ballot, it requires a 2/3 vote for approval. If the residents band together and create a voting initiative to put it on the ballot, that initiative measure only requires a simple majority approval. And this is per what we heard in the CSDA webinar from their legal guys, that that's an option for a ballot measure. If it's created by ballot initiative, not through the board, it does not require the 2/3, it only requires a simple majority. So that's an option that we just heard about that we're going to pursue. and see what the ramifications of the issues are in that. But basically, the initiative process in California is pretty well laid out. They create the ballot measure, they go get a certain amount of signatures, which I don't believe is very high for a small district. They introduce it to the county puts it on the ballot, and that measure could pass with a simple majority. And it has the same effect of law once passed as if the board creates a measure. So I think we should discuss, again, we talked about the extra airplane fee. Do you want somebody to expend the effort to create another board-sponsored ballot measure?
Just to clarify your weights in the agenda, the ballot measure is the special tax, right, as opposed to a fee?
Yeah, special tax, yeah. That's
Which
what
would
it
be,
looks like.
which would be collected by the county and would save, you know, it's tax deductible, first of all, and it's collected by the county, which saves the district, you know, processing overhead.
Yeah, it's probably the cheapest method of raising revenue if you can get 2/3 of the vote.
One half.
Or resident initiated?
Or I believe resident initiated would look, taste, and smell the same but it only requires a simple majority to pass because it's created by a voter initiative, not through the governing body.
I'm real hesitant to do anything with another ballot measure initiated by the boards as you described, given the past history of trying to get 2/3. We get the majority. I think the last one was 61%, but to have the board, the district has never been able to get to 67%. And last time around, that was a lot of work.
But based on the Measure P results, we would have passed that on the initiative side.
Yes.
By a fair margin.
By a fair margin, yes. I think my summary of the situation, and this is just my summary for the board to discuss, is we have some 80-ish hard no's in the district that are opposed. That's the same number that opposed 18 and opposed the last election.
Okay.
Of the very high advocacy group, we have about 50 to maybe 60 based on people that come out for celebrations and participate actively. And then you have the big people in the middle that are influenced one way or the other. But in the last election, we had a very strong majority in favor of Measure P. So if that had not required the 2/3 vote by legal means, then that would have passed. So I don't know how much the board can advise that, but it would be, I would suggest that the residents consider this strongly as creating their own board measure through voter incentives in order to get it on the ballot. And I think the chance of passing a 2/3 vote is essentially zero. My, again, informal discussions, if I go for a walk, usually somebody has a discussion with me from the both for and opposed Measure P. One is stuck on the amount, thinks a very small amount would pass so they could test and see if we spend it correctly or not. But it becomes an amount that makes everybody maybe feel good, but it doesn't cover the real cost. And that was my point, is we need to have a real basis for this required amount that's backed up by what our needs are, not just an arbitrary number. The other strongly no opposed said, oh, he didn't see any problem, but was concerned about how it was going to be spent. Well, it's, who knows, you know, so, and then the other major category of no would be opposed for any fee increase, irregardless of the situation, given where they're coming from. That's my personal opinion of it. So I think another ballot measure trying to get 2/3 is too steep a hill to climb for this residential district.
I'd
I
rather,
agree with you, Burl, and I think if we do this with a resident initiative, we need to, from a board standpoint, we need to really go out there and give them the white paper briefing on what we actually need. I mean, we saw Canut's, charts earlier, and there's a lot of stuff that could basically just bite us in the rear end at any time, and we don't have the money to pay for it.
Yeah, my suggestion, and I think it's legitimate, but we have to verify because the board can't really drive this initiative measure or it crosses over the legality of it. But I think we can, in the very near future, have another, call it a workshop on fees, which we need to do anyway. We can talk about multi-airport. We can lay out the real cost of streets as we see it, and we can repeat what the summary items are, put numbers to those, and then the residents can take that data if they want to pursue an initiative, pick the number they want to pursue and go with it. I think that's how we transmit the data to them in a legal manner.
Sure.
And a necessary thing to do anyway. So
What would be the schedule for for backing up to when we'd have to have that workshop to support that?
Pretty soon, because I don't know, Canute looked at the schedule for ballots having to be submitted for next November. And it's coming up quicker than you think.
Yeah, last year we had to have a special board meeting to vote in that we were going to do a measure in early April. Then we had to have a public meeting, and then we had to have 2 board meetings before the county deadline of June 30th.
Yeah, so this whole initiative process would have to go fairly quickly.
Okay, but he just said, if you're doing this as an initiative instead of a board, he just said 2 board meetings. Would that still be that wouldn't be a?
Yeah, see that I don't know. If a voter initiative might have a different schedule, but you probably still have to have the signatures in by a certain date and things like that. So.
Yeah, we can do, or you guys can do research. It's all online. My suspicion is that it's pretty much the ballot measure has to be approved, which means the signature is in place and the wording of the measure into the county sometime in May, it'd be my guess, to make the next election. Unless you want to spend the money to do a special. I believe there's also a $200 filing fee that I've heard about, but again, these are very new information. I didn't know this existed until less than a week ago. But I tend to agree. I think we ought to vote on whether to do another board-sponsored ballot measure and then move on. But I think the fix is to quickly put together another concise workshop as far as these fees and street maintenance and lay it out, and then the people can take that information and run with it or not. That's their choice. But it's going to need somebody in the neighborhood or a group of people in the neighborhood to form the beginnings of this initiative and get it done.
I don't know what if we do the board measure as well, or
I think that'd be.
Could we withdraw one of them, I guess? I would say something has to change, either a lesser amount, I guess, or
well, we need
some other documentation, or
I think legally we have to be a little careful that the board measure and the other measure don't look identical. I think that could be contested.
Okay.
So
yeah,
my personal opinion is that the validity of getting a 2/3 vote is essentially zero, unless something dramatically changes in the neighborhood, and I don't see it,
And I agree with you wholeheartedly, especially if we put down a realistic dollar amount that we need to operate with.
Which we did in Measure P. We went through a very similar exercises, they're now updating that. But I think we understand, more critical nature of some things, such as the fuel hoses and point of sale that we didn't understand before. So in many ways, the situation kind of gets worse from what we did a year ago, putting numbers together for Measure P.
Well, what has really changed from Measure P to now is I think The airport portion is probably a little lower potentially than we had proposed. But I think the slash gutter was going through the roof, and that's the one that needs to be tempered and better understood.
Measure P was drop in the bucket for the streets, right? It helped, if it passed, it helped the airport greatly, but
Burl, the way you understand it so far, but I realize it's new.
Yep.
Larry said you guys the board went through the exercise of putting all the real numbers to this before
Yes.
Measure P was put out there.
Mhm.
You see a legal conflict if the neighborhood decided to go this initiative route by extrapolating those numbers from the board, or would we have?
I think that's exactly correct. And I think the concern, Knud suggested we may also do a board ballot measure in parallel. And I think that's where we get bit.
Okay.
If they look the same. But I think the initiative, I think the way it really works is take the board data, the financial data, and choose to bill themselves by the creation of initiative. I think that's exactly how it should work. And we will try to get that feedback ASAP on the mechanism of it.
I think we have to act really fast, because if the deadlines are from like last year, they're coming up within a couple of weeks, I think. With the deadlines for when it has to be announced and collecting signatures.
Don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, that's what we need to find out, I guess.
that's something we probably shouldn't do as a board, but
Hey, Burl or team, is there a way to, I don't know what the legalities or what we can do, but putting down the bills you've listed here, the emergency fund things we've done, if we could do that on a quarterly basis, monthly basis, and through FOCA, we could share it with 120 homes or what the current status is, so people could really know the true numbers of where we are in the deficits and where we need to be. So that way people can make a better educated voting decision the next time we bring up a proposal, just to show. I know in the folks I talked to, they just didn't understand because they don't go to these meetings to understand the ramifications decision, what that made.
Yeah, I think if FOCA is willing to help distribute information, I think that's fine.
Actually, to Danny's point, that's a good point, because people that I talk, and I think this initiative might be a good idea, because the people that I talk to, look, there's not one of us that live in this entire city, for that matter, that love to pay higher taxes or fees.
right.
It just goes against human nature. But we're also intelligent people, and we have a lot of intelligent neighbors that look at this and go, we do need to sustain this, because if this airport is not sustained, we have houses with big garages when there's a strip mall across the street. And I think the average person didn't, like Danny is saying, didn't really understand where the financial bind was on the airport. It was more control than anything else that I heard.
So many various things, but if we could continually get this word out via a newsletter monthly, there's no disputing where
Get
the
the numbers in front of them. Numbers don't lie.
Yeah.
All right, I think that's a good point. We'll work on a format that we can consistently update that is as clear as we can. I think one of the things used against us during the Measure P was some of the proposed upgrades we were going to do was used actually against us during that process. So I think we need to be,
Yeah.
we need to get back to, if this breaks, this happens, this is what it costs about to break. I think that's the principle to follow. If you guys agree with that, we'll work on a format for that.
I totally agree. I think showing exactly the severity and those things, then at least through FOCA, I think to Michael's point is that I don't think people understand, besides not only having a home with a big garage, the value of your home, the loss of revenue you're going to get in the value of your home if the airport is shut down. And this will help, I think, educate folks, but a lot.
No, I agree. I think we I think we were guilty of too much information, maybe too much detail last time around, and I think we learned from that. So we'll work on a boiled version, and and I don't think there's any real timing on it. We'll put it out as soon as we have the data. We just need to put it in a format that's simplified, so we can send it to a few people and they can edit, they can comment on the format, and then we can agree and send it out. How's that sound?
That would be great. Also, I think the other thing is like the lights coming back on. I know
So,
you guys
yeah,
are
so
still
we'll-
working on that. If you guys could give me a list of who to thank and all, I think the neighborhood needs to know who are the people that are actually, you know, rolling up their sleeves and doing work for free around here.
All right, all right. So we'll work on both of those things. I think that's a good input, and I think it leads into this initiative issue and stuff, and we will develop it further.
And I think it's a great idea, but I just remember Fokker got in trouble for sending out stuff about the street vote back in 2009, I guess, but I don't know if
Yeah, you got to be a
it would
little
be done in a
careful
way
there.
where
I mean,
it doesn't take sides, I
Yeah,
guess.
I think what it'll be is just a newsletter that we send out, the monthly newsletter, anything going, here's the current status of the airport.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah,
think
okay.
if you guys put it in a fashion of, hey, here's where we are, here's how much money you got left. If the, you know, and I think having pieces identified of what's urgent, and
all right.
I think people just need to know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's very useful, and I think the idea of a monthly thing will force us to keep it up. So I think that's good.
Okay, great, thanks.
All right, so I think
Just a Just a closing comment, Bill. I think it's good that the board is looking at long-term plans and the big picture, but the short-term things from executive branch, you know, it sounds like looking at Knut's presentation is the salary thing sounds like it's really critical. The point of sales looks like we could do something like that. So those look like short-term things that may be able to be solved before the end of the fiscal year. I don't know what the solution is, but I'd like to see more. It looks like we could put more emphasis on those two things also.
yeah, what I suggested at the end of that talk was that we revisit that and look at the actual budget layout next meeting, and I think we can decide what we can shuffle or not shuffle, and or use some of this CARES reserve that we've sat on and refine a couple of these numbers we don't have, and I think that would take care of that for the next board meeting is what I was thinking. So I guess the question of the moment is, do we want to pursue another board generated ballot measure or not?
My main concern is if we don't get a voter initiative one, that we have nothing when we come November, I guess, but maybe we can.
Well, I disagree with that because we have the other option too with fees. So.
Yeah,
Okay.
I would agree with that. I am not in favor of another ballot initiatives because I think that could conflict with a potential resident initiative as we discussed, and I think our time is spent better putting together the information for workshops and pursuing other fees. I mean, if the voter initiative.
Oh, I'm all in favor for it. I'm just make sure that we don't stay in November and have nothing, I guess, come November.
Well, the way it works, here's a real quick summary of what I know about raising money for special districts. There's two big options. One is it's resident public generated, which is the initiative has a very low level of requirement for votes to pass. The other side is the board could actually, as Dave said earlier, we can assess fees. The problem is we got to spend a whole bunch up front for justification of those fees by developing financial plans and profiles and documenting everything to justify the actual value of the fee through certified outside consultants. So we're talking, you know, a fair amount of money to hire these people to generate the books. It's going to be necessary to justify it, and then the board can initiate that fee. So the way it kind of works, the way to think about it is if the public generates it, there's a lower level of rigor than if the board generates it. as far as imposing fees on people. So if the public generates a fee on themselves, it has a lower level of rigor, both legal prep and voting wise, than if the board or the management, government management imposes it. The third option is a special assessment, like was done for the streets. And that's a viable option, but we're gonna be spending 25 to 35,000 in legal fees to start one. That's basically what it costs to do the bond for the streets, buried in the cost of the bond. And then even if we do a no loan bond, meaning we just accumulate money without a loan, we're still gonna have to come up with somewhere in that range to both set up the special district, revisit it, develop the ballots, have it processed, yada, yada, yada. There's file drawers full of paperwork leading up to that street bond that we'd have to revisit and redo. So that's the third option we haven't really talked about, but we don't have 25K or 30K to come up with the seed money to get that legal thing working, even though we would theoretically collect it back once the fees start coming in. If the assessment passes, the assessments still need a vote, a majority vote by property. So I think the ballot initiative is our best shot right at the moment, at the lowest cost and best effect as far as money coming into the district. So let's go ahead and vote on whether we want to pursue another ballot measure. I'm going to say no.
Jeff's a no.
Terry's a
No.
I'm sorry, who's that?
I'll say yes.
So we have that one. So we're currently not gonna pursue another board generated ballot measure. We can work on workshops to come up with an amount though for certain.
I'm sorry, Glenn, which way did you vote for?
No.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So Kevin's been waiting in the wings, whether we're gonna move ahead on an expenditure for an airport vehicle or not. If he's still here, I haven't heard from him for a while.
Still here.
Do you want to put yours up, or do you want me to try to get it up, put it up for you?
Well, if you have it handy, you can put it up on the screen. That'd be good. I'll read. We have two public comments, and I can read them into the record while you're getting that.
Actually, I got to look for it. So if you want to,
I'll read slowly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. In the order received, let's see. Given the dire nature of the finances at CPAD, it would seem prudent that one of the last items that we purchase would be another gas-powered conveyance. There is absolutely no way to predict what future costs are going to be, especially if this is used off pavement within CPAD. It is not reasonably prudent for a government agency to purchase used equipment and expose taxpayers to this liability. A couple other items related to this proposal. As well, there is no cost indicated for annual insurance premium. Any off CPAD business should not be authorized and have employees reimbursed for their mileage. Many local businesses will deliver items for free. If they are not able to accommodate, then have Uber pick it up. These are just a couple highly valid thoughts about this, and CPAD just really cannot justify purchasing, maintaining, and insuring a vehicle. Sincerely, Mr. Chris Cockrell. That was March 15. 21 March 2021. If your home, property, business, or aircraft reside in the air park or within the airport district, it is imperative that you understand that the health and welfare of this airport directly affects your property values, whether or not you're involved in aviation. We currently are blessed to have an airport manager and district board of directors that are putting in countless hours of work to overcome the lack of dedication by the previous three managers. In conjunction with dedicated volunteers who are often using their own equipment, great progress has been made. The purpose of the airport district is to operate and maintain the public use airport. For years, CPAD has tried to get by without even the most basic tools to fulfill its mission, and too frequently, the airport's appearance and assets have suffered. To maintain the 40 to 60 acres that define this airport, a compact truck and other mowing or clearing equipment are not only justified, but a necessity. It is important that the district is financially prudent in the acquisition and maintenance of all equipment, but there should not be any hesitancy by the board to support acquiring key resources needed to maintain an airport. Mr. Michael R. Bigler. End of public comment.
Okay, I think this is the last one you sent me by email.
Correct. To Mr. Cockrell's point, the insurance, he's correct. It wasn't itemized before. Our underwriters say that we should be, budgeting about $100 a month to 130 a month, depending on which vehicle it is. All government agencies are required to have $1 million liability policy. So that's what she was benchmarking that against. It was not detailed or given its own light item before because the requested amount is an overall not to exceed amount. Sticking with the cost just for a second, I think there's no reason that we can't go more cheaply if we're looking for a quality used vehicle. To buy a new vehicle, I think you're in a completely different orbit in terms of the acquisition expense. To the point of use of the vehicle, yeah, I think any entity-owned vehicle is reasonably restricted to district purposes. So the idea of Joe, the district resident, thinking because he lives in the district, he has access to a truck, that would be wrong. But to the other parts of the use of it, its main purpose is not for running to the bank or running to the hardware, which certainly it would be used for, where a per mile reimbursement is what's contemplated by the IRS. In this instance, we're talking about a little more rigorous applications out on the field where the four-wheel drive to pull a swisher, deck mower, and that sort of thing, off angle driving to pull brush, small rocks, and that sort of thing, which would really be untenable for a privately owned vehicle, is the purpose of this unit. So I can field questions or board talk amongst yourselves.
I would say, Kevin, this is something you've been talking about for a long time. We've had the discussions about, the golf cart. The golf cart is not really suited for pulling these things. But you just to clarify, during the whole process, you worked a lot with CAL FIRE coming in and the slash piles and things like that. By not having, and we've relied on volunteers donating the use of their various their equipment. What impact have you had with the CAL FIRE and with the brush clearing stuff by not having such a truck? I mean, how?
Well, we can model how frugal we've actually been with the CAL FIRE team. We're going to be in a difficult place if the trend of the Growlersburg camp continues, which is I think originally had 8 teams up there, and I think they're down to 4 now as early release laws and all these other things we could get into are kind of really upending that program. In working the South Ridge, just for instance, the bane of our night operations, the captain that handles scheduling, I asked him to send me an updated invoice, if you will, for services rendered. since December, which was really the push up that hill, if you will. And we ran up a bill with them of about $2,000. And that's about the equivalent in the private sector of having one decent tree taken down. You know, a lot of you guys know what it costs to top some of the trees in district, those tall redwoods. So we've got an outstanding bill for them about $2,000. And as I look at the number of days and the number of teams that were up there, that would easily be $25,000 to $30,000 worth of work. So we've been very good with leveraging other resources. Why is that applicable here? To get them down here with the tools that they needed, and this would extend to their work on the field, it's on the airfield itself. I go out there and pick up all of the other tools that don't fit on those red people mover trucks that they have that come down the hill each day with the team inside. So for each and every day that they're on the field or up on the hill, I'm driving out to Growlersburg to Georgetown to do that round trip. So, you know, on the one hand, think of how much it would have cost us out of pocket to get that, just the South Ridge, not any other of the 270 degrees around our airport, just the South Ridge. If we had that cash in hand, or had to pay it rather, you know, that's what kind of a truck can you buy for 25 grand? That'd be a pretty decent machine. So it's the long answer is it's not apparent to Joe Pilot or Joe Resident, but we're doing a pretty good job of managing that money for field service. We've just, you know, we've got a couple of tools when you're running a land asset such as an airport, a marina, a golf course, whatever you want, that you really have to get out there and move around the field. So I you know, having the golf cart, it's great for going down and checking the pay boxes, but other than that, it's I don't know what I want to call it, but not enough.
Well, I think from, let's see. One of the thoughts also is philosophically, do we want to continue to operate totally dependent on the generosity of donors and availability of volunteers for essential functions? And I think this kind of falls in that category.
Because I believe you were borrowing trucks before to run up to do the Growlersburg round trip.
Well, you're dependent on the managers using a personal vehicle to do essential airport business, or it doesn't get done, I think is what I'm saying. And or a volunteer willing to loan his vehicle for our purposes for basically essential stuff. But I think philosophically, I think we need to consider whether that's how we want to continue, or can we continue reliably to operate for the long term. And I think that's kind of one of the basis of trying to build a foundation for this airport for the long term, which is kind of one of our themes that we've been trying to promote. And I think this falls under that category because the sort of activities done here are pretty essential, and they're 100% reliable on somebody be willing to use their personal vehicle or a loaner by a volunteer without being compensated. So, because rentals, et cetera, we've looked at, and rentals are astronomically expensive if you had to go both in time and cost to rent a little pickup every time you needed to do something that involved a pickup.
So if we were to go forward with something like this for 12,000, I'm just doing the math in my head. We would basically be borrowing from the 15,000 that we have that we rolled over to next year in order to do that, or
Yeah, I think it
or
would fit
use that
into,
as an emergency fund if something were to break next week.
we could
Yeah,
use,
I think that's.
go ahead, Bill.
I think that yes, I think we would have to tap a chunk of that reserve to pay for this. We need to make sure the other critical priorities are thought through as far as a budget discussion before we do that, because, you know, we don't want to have everything's hypercritical. There is an airport reserve fund. I think with the 15K on top of it, it's like 19 or 20K now or something like that, Canute. So there's a little more there than just the 15.
It's up to 24 now with the 15 we just added to. Mhm.
So I think it's a question for the board to pull the budget up and say, yeah, I think the way to look at this is, yes, we agree this is appropriate. We think the price is about right. We think it's this, that, and the other. And then we're going to have to develop the decisions on the revising the budget by resolution, either at a special meeting to talk about the whole thing or at the next board meeting to figure out how to fund it, because it's not obvious. Like Jeff said, we got to move this to move that. So
Right.
Hey, guys, if you don't mind me interjecting, I'm fairly new to the neighborhood. It's first time on one of these meetings, but my name is Jason Rieger, and I actually own the largest wholesale dealership in Northern California. This is what I do.
Mhm.
If I've, a couple different things is I could help you find a vehicle. I have no problem selling it to you at cost. Is one idea. And if it's allowable, I'd have no problem financing it and being able to, and then instead of coming up with everything all at once, be able to make payments spread out over time. Another idea that I have is with Cops and Rodders possibly coming up in September, is to actually find some type of a collector vehicle, sports car, or something like that, that I can donate, that you can sell raffle tickets for. The only way that works, though, is if on the other end, if there's actually a mechanism in place to sell the tickets, sell the raffle tickets. So those are both an option, and I go through 300 to 400 cars a month, so I have no doubt that I could find something that would work and do what I can to help make it easy.
So Jason, you're saying that you would donate something that would be appealing to the car club community.
Exactly.
Let volunteers will say, run around and sell raffle tickets, and the money that is acquired in that raffle would go to the board to facilitate this truck.
Exactly. And the thing is, with having time to sell tickets, if there's a mechanism in place to sell tickets between the time we get the donated vehicle and maybe have Cops and Rodders be the event where the drawing is. So we could sell tickets up until Cops and Rodders, and at Cops and Rodders, maybe have somebody standing at the entryway where they pay their parking fees and ask them if they want to buy a ticket to win the car. This way, we may be able to raise enough money for that vehicle that we can get a much better vehicle than limiting us to the $12,000 budget.
Well, we'll have to check with legal, see if, I don't know as a special district can do that, but I think FOCA might be able to as a fundraiser for the airport through their nonprofit status.
Folk will turn around and donate that money. Yeah.
And then it's set aside and then donated to us. I think, I believe, yeah, I'm not even sure if the district can say accept the donation and then resell it on our own. I think it gets messy. Dave would have to wade in on that if he's still on.
Yeah, I'm here. We would have to, that's really the purpose of FOCA. to handle those kind of non-public fund, non-appropriated fund activities. So we would have to run all that through FOCA, but I think that's easily doable.
Yeah, I think that's okay.
For the whole raffle idea. For the acquisition and financing thing, we can make that work. But this, by the way, just a pat on the back to Mr. Rieger. This is how this airport's going to survive. People stepping up and carrying much more than their weight in assistance. So good on you for stepping up and doing that. I think that's a great solution, and may that inspire other residents to do similar things.
No
And
problem.
to piggyback on what you just said, Dave, for the people that don't know Mr. Rieger, he's not an aviator at all. And he is very much in support of this airport. And I think we need more recognition for people that are trying to do things like this and think outside the box.
That help us keep this a special place to live.
Absolutely.
That's fantastic.
Hey, Bigler, which CFI on this call is not having Jason be an aviator? Never mind.
Yeah.
Oh, I hear you. We'll work on that next. It took me a minute. It's late.
But Jason, that's fantastic.
Yeah, I think so too.
That absolutely is a Dave bet. That's how we survive and keep this a thriving, great place to live.
Well, it's one of those things where, you know, I own that wholesale dealership and I sell cars to dealers all over the United States, but I also own a retail dealership and I do a lot of up in Susanville where I do a lot of community involvement, and I have a lot of people come to me for donations, and you know, I'll have some you know, the basketball team come and look for a $500 donation, and I've found over the years that, you know, I could give them a $500 donation, no problem, or I could buy them a $500 iPad that they can sell raffle tickets and raise $5,000. So
I think that's fantastic ideas. So
We just need to make sure we don't step on our toes from a legal ramification.
right, and if it, you know, and to me it doesn't matter if it needs to go through FOCA, then so be it. However we can make it work.
well, I think what I would do moving forward then is to approve the capital expenditure for the airport vehicle, subject to figuring out how to pay for it. And then we'll pursue these different options and move money around or go to financing or wait for the raffle to then pay it off, or some combination of that. I think that would be a great thing to pursue.
So we have to rewrite the motion.
Yeah, I think motion to approve the capital expenditure for the airport vehicles, subject to figuring out how to pay for it or something like that, finance it.
That's really not going to be available to you. What you can do is authorize a capital expenditure not to exceed, appoint someone to handle the details, and you have to commit the public funds to the project you authorize and direct management staff to work with various resources.
To recoup them, yeah, okay.
Various resources to help defray the cost or finance the expenditure, but you have to commit public funds when you make a motion for an expenditure.
Okay.
In that light, with everything else, should we table this until it's part of the discussion with the other items?
I would think that we would need to move ahead because it's a very critical item, right? And if we have to finance it up front, then that doesn't mean that we couldn't recover some of the money later potentially, right?
Right.
Yeah, I agree. It's something that's, it's something that we very much need. It's just how do
Well, I
we?
guess the short answer is we would approve the capital expenditure, and we will initially take it out of the CARES fund 15K from the standpoint of moving money around.
That's all you really need. That's all you really need to accomplish today. If that's what you want to do. all these other recoupment and fundraising things can follow along in due course.
Correct.
Without
That's
any action of the board.
because we do have the money to cover it as long if we are willing to use the reserve at this point without looking at anything else.
Well, that is correct. As you said, we need to do the overhaul of the budget again, right?
Yes.
To prioritize the other items, and we may recover some from the mowing expenses.
Then we need to have a separate meeting on revisiting the budget in total with these other aspects. Yeah.
And then have to account for the monthly insurance that go, put that into the budget, maintenance and so forth. But I think I think, this is something we've been talking about, has been brought up for a long, long time. We know the golf cart is kind of not doing it. It's an older model with the lower voltage motors. It doesn't have the torque to begin with. And it doesn't meet what the needs to keep this airport properly operating. Regardless if the golf cart was in perfect condition. So I agree. I think it's needed. We're trying to make this a very highly desirable place to live, and which helps all of our property values and so forth, and makes us continue, as one of the small elements that helps continue to make this a special place to live. We know that, since we've got the mowing and, the airport just physically looks heck of a lot better.
Yes, it does.
And that does a lot for me. The attitude goes along with this.
Okay. Well, I guess I would suggest we approve the motion to approve the expenditure for the airport vehicle.
Second.
Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Maybe a question for Kevin. How much do we spend on insurance today for use of private vehicles and third-party vehicles?
Oh dear, I'll have to look that up.
Oh, okay.
Off the top of my head.
Never mind. Doesn't matter. Thanks.
I don't think the recording caught affirmative votes. Probably should roll call.
Yeah, let's do that. Burl, what's your vote?
I'm yes.
Knut?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Glenn?
Yes.
And Terry is yes. Unanimous vote. Motion is passed.
All right. Got some homework to do, but maybe if you donate a supercharged like 51 F1 pickup, you could use that. I don't know. Okay, long meeting, but necessary. So I think in the near future, I propose we do both a citizen public workshop on fees and costs and options to get all that back out in the open, and so the data is available for them to use if they choose. And then I think the board needs to look at a meeting to discuss revising the current fiscal year budget. And I think the timing of those is dependent somewhat on the getting the open items on the underfunded or unfunded stuff filled in. I think the board could meet on the budget whenever you want. So we can wait a month and do it then, or we can do it earlier if it seems prudent to do it earlier.
I suggest we do it earlier. I think we got some items on there which we need direction on, or needs to have a plan for.
Yeah, I don't think we can keep pushing it ahead of us. We need to act on some of these.
So you want to meet again on the 29th, same time, same place, and discuss budget?
Sure.
Yep.
Fiscal 21 budget. We won't discuss fees and alternates and increases at that point. We're just simply going to resolve our current budget situation, moving money around, et cetera, et cetera.
Right, and I hope we can resolve the thing about the inventory chains item on the budget, that as that'll play into how we allocate money.
Yeah, that can be part of the discussion. So, okay, so tentatively pencil in the 29th for a budget revision meeting, and we'll get that done. That's the only thing we'll put on the agenda. And then when we get those other numbers, hopefully soon, we will go ahead and schedule a meeting to discuss fees and possible other ways to raise money.
I would like to
Okay.
thank Rieger for
Anything else for
for
today?
that helping us out with
Appreciate
that.
all of the input, and I think we're making progress on the money front, which is certainly a challenge for us to deal with. So,
Hey, everybody, this is Dave and Donna Becker. We just want to put a special shout out to Julie Bolin, who was co-chair of our activity last week. I think we thank Mrs. Robertson, but Julie was an equal strong player in getting that done. So thank you to her.
I agree. Yeah, she was reticent to have her name out there, but it's out there, so she can't hide too much longer. And thank you, Dave, for contributing the meal and the place and all that. That was excellent.
Yeah, you guys did a great job.
Thank you, Dave and Donna, for hosting. It was great. Thank you, everybody.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, good work, everybody. Anything else for tonight?
No.
No,
All right, well, call for adjournment at 9:56 then. Lots of stuff. Thank you.
thanks.
Good work, board, Burl, and making a decision about the equipment. Good work again.
Yes, good meeting. Thanks, everyone.